Okay. Hello. My name is Michael Mackin. I'm the director of the Tutu Global Forgiveness Challenge, and I'm very honored to welcome Jin Furi and Letlapa Mpelele to speak with us today about their extraordinary story of forgiveness. In 1993, Jin's daughter, Lindy, was killed in an armed attack which had been ordered by Letlapa, who was then a commander of the forces fighting against the apartheid government in South Africa. Their story has been documented in the award-winning short film Beyond Forgiving, which they have generously donated to all participants of the Forgiveness Challenge to watch in the Forgiveness Gallery starting today. So you can link there from your Forgiveness Challenge work. So thank you again for joining us, Jin and Letlapa.
Our pleasure.
Welcome.
So, Jin, I'd like to start by asking you a question. I've read that your decision to forgive was something that you were considering even shortly after Lindy's death. Can you tell us what prompted you to take this path in the beginning?
I can only, on reflection, say that 2 years before Lindy died, I had established and there's an echo, so I'm confusing myself. that I formulated my mission statement to extend God's grace to each person I meet. And at the time of Lindy's death, I had forgotten that. But it came to be after I had taken the decision to forgive the young men who killed Lindy and Letlapa later, when I knew who he was.
And Letlapa, when exactly did the process of forgiveness begin for you? Was it something that you had considered before you met Jin?
Before I met Jin, I never considered it. Actually, I had concluded that I was beyond being forgiven. I never expected anyone to forgive me. And when I asked Jin for a meeting, it was all about telling her my own story with the hope that she would understand the background against which I was brought up, under oppression, under humiliation, and under a white racist regime. But to my surprise, even before I asked for forgiveness, she said she would forgive me.
And Jin, even though the process started for you very early, what did you find was the hardest part of moving through forgiving both Letlapa and the other men involved?
I think the hardest part was not knowing why they had done it. And then when I met them, it became clear. So it was easier to proceed with the process because it's not a one-off event. It's a journey.
And for you, Letlapa, what did you find the most difficult part of the process?
The most difficult part of the process is that I was the one receiving the gift of forgiveness. And therefore, I had a responsibility to reciprocate it, to do something in turn that would make me a worthy recipient of that gift of forgiveness. So this is not something that you do in one event. And as Jin has rightly pointed out, forgiveness is not a destination, but it is a journey. So every day I have a responsibility to show my appreciation for the gift of forgiveness.
And Letlapa has demonstrated through conciliation meetings in his own community and in Khayelitsha, a suburb of Cape Town, where we planted trees of conciliation and a beautiful poem to Lindy, which is on the Lindy Free Foundation website and under poetry.
It's beautiful. Thank you. Lapa, again, you've both spoken about the importance of telling the story of the pain, the situation that has hurt all of us, that we find we need to forgive. Tell me, or tell us what your experience was the first time that you told your story, that you actually felt that you had been able to find your voice to explain your side of what had happened.
Well, as a matter of fact, storytelling has some quality of healing. It makes one to feel relieved after you have told your story, especially if someone listens to your story attentively. And I must say that in this story, we have had some supporters or people who energize us from time to time. Initiatives of Change being one of those organizations that have gone out of their way to broaden the horizons of our storytelling. For instance, presently we are in the UK and we are busy with Beyond Forgiving UK tour, and this has opened many vistas of telling our story. So each time this story is told, there is a new dimension that comes with it. And what is most inspiring is that we witness communities being inspired and individuals coming forward. And when we were in the Solomon Islands, there was a lady whose brother was beheaded in public, and for a decade, she bottled up that experience. But once we told our story, she was courageous enough to come forward and tell her own story.
And this morning, we had a young gentleman in Parliament, also vulnerable enough to tell his story of pain. So I think because we're vulnerable in the documentary, Beyond Forgiving, it allows others to become vulnerable.
I think that's very true. We've found in the Forgiveness Challenge that there's a forum where people can go and exchange their stories and talk to each other about issues they're having. And there was one thread in particular where people were struggling with reaching out to the person that they wanted to forgive. And someone posted about that and said how much trouble she was having. A number of people, commented just supporting her and telling her, giving her advice on how to go about doing it. And she reflected for a while and then actually reached out to this person. And it was someone in her family that she hadn't spoken to for many, many years, decades even. And when she reached out, she was able to make breakthroughs that she had never imagined she would have. And that inspired other people in the forum to do the same thing. And I think that having that support, hearing someone else tell the story, can really free up things for other people. And I think the work that you are both doing is a really profound example of that. So Ledlapa, certainly detractors and supporters in the general public, that's certainly to be expected for something so challenging as forgiveness in our culture. But what have you found has been the result or has been the reaction from the people closest to you in your family and your friends?
Well, as a matter of fact, I have two sets of families. I have family in the traditional sense, my relatives, and I have political family, the Pan-Africanist Congress of Tanzania. So as far as my family is concerned, They are very appreciative of what Jean and I are doing. And when I invited Jean to my homecoming ceremony, she was welcomed by the whole community. About 2,000 people turned up. And of course, when she stood up to speak, she got the loudest applause. So that is a different case altogether when it comes to my political family. I know that a lot of people in my political party are happy that you are on forgiveness path, but of course there are some important voices, those who think that one is being manipulated by CIA or by people with political agendas. So yes, of course, it is expected in the field of politics that whatever you do, there'll be those people who will be skeptical of your motives.
I've experienced the same accusation of manipulation, that I'm being manipulated by initiatives of change and Violet Lava, and I get really annoyed because for me that indicates that they think I have no role, that people can just manipulate me wherever they like. And so I'm quite articulate about that.
Understood. I think that we're getting a little bit of feedback from each other's microphones, and I think perhaps when Jin, you're speaking, if Ledlapa, you could just cover your microphone, and vice versa. Let's see if that reduces the echo a little bit, because I think that it can be a little bit difficult. So just the microphone on your headset, you just cover that, and let's see if that helps.
Okay.
Great. So I guess, you know, a question about how this has changed both of your lives. How do you feel making this decision changed the course of your life, and how do you imagine your life may have gone if forgiveness, if you hadn't both made this decision to forgive and move forward?
From my perspective, I was lecturing at the University of Cape Town and took early retirement in 2003 to concentrate my effort into the Lily Foundation, where if this hadn't happened, I would have continued working until retirement age, which would have been a lot more comfortable in terms of retirement funds.
And for you, Letlapa?
Well, it's a pity I didn't hear the question because I was busy trying to reduce the noise because you said there's feedback.
So the question is, how do you feel that making the decision to forgive has changed your life? What has it brought into your life? And how do you imagine your life would have gone if this meeting between you and Jin hadn't happened, and this conciliation that you've reached?
Your question reminds me of our experience in the Solomon Islands, where after we had an interview with a journalist, the following day, the article in the newspaper read that after Jean had forgiven me, I was released from prison. And Jean took offense because that was factually inaccurate. And she wanted the journalist to rewrite the story. And I said, no, I think the journalist was right, because indeed, after you had forgiven me, I was released from prison of conscience. So that exercise, or that gift of forgiveness, actually released me from prison. And I felt that my humanity was restored.
And since then, you have both, Jin, you mentioned earlier the Lindy Fourie Foundation, and you have both been working, traveling around the world and certainly around South Africa to continue your work and spread this idea of conciliation to as many people as possible. Jin, can you explain for the people listening what the aim of the Lindy Fourie Foundation actually is?
The purpose of the Lindy Fourie Foundation is essentially to encourage conciliation as much as possible. And our target group is the ex-combatants on all sides of the political spectrum who are still suffering from post-traumatic stress. It's a horrible reality that results in nightmares, unexplained rage, a lot of substance abuse, and of course disconnect from relationships and the people who surround them and are loved by them. So we've concentrated on a community outside Kimberley in the Northern Cape who are the San people who were involved in the apartheid forces as trackers and are now really dislocated from their own community and homeland and facing enormous challenges of unemployment and substance abuse and poor self-worth.
And Ledlapa, what sort of results have you seen with your work in these communities?
Well, we are at a starting point, but of course the results are starting to show because what is encouraging about our involvement is that a lot of people who are young, the youth, are coming forward to be part and parcel of that project or initiative of making them refrain from taking drugs and even leading useful lives. But of course, it's an ongoing thing. We have not made a very, very huge impact so far because what is challenging with initiatives like this is that without funding, it is not easy to carry them to their logical conclusion.
But what is very encouraging is that we've got more international support, and the foundation has spread to an international forum where in Switzerland is the center of the Lindy Fourie Association International. And together we're arranging a conference in September in Bloemfontein in the Free State of South Africa, where we're hosting a conference on freedom, our responsibility, which is intended to kickstart a culture of sustainability, empowerment, and integrity.
That's fantastic. And it sounds like for you, Jin, the experience that you had with in Parliament today with a person who got up and courageously shared their story, and Ledlapa in the Solomon Islands, it sounds like that was a particularly profound experience, having that woman who'd maintained her silence for so long about her story. Are there any other experiences that you've had in your work with the foundation that stick in your mind as examples of what telling a story and opening up can do for someone?
I think for me, the range is enormous of different people's response. But one that sticks in my memory is in Glasgow, in an ancient stone cathedral, where we had an audience of about 30 people, or 35. And as Latapa and I were speaking, I looked at the audience and they looked so stoic. I thought, oh dear, this isn't going down too well. And the Reverend wafted us down the long nave, and the audience then came, or the congregation came to speak to us. And they gathered around Latlapa. I think they wanted to know if he was going to continue his violence. And a little lady came to me and she said, I've been meaning to write a letter of forgiveness for 30 years, and I'm going home to do it tonight. That makes it so rewarding and worthwhile.
Well, as for me, there are so many. It's difficult to single out one. But another one that stands out is our experience in Liverpool. Well, Jim wasn't there. It was initiatives of change, operative Howard Grace and I. And as we were addressing the school pupils, one of them asked, because we had showed them a 15-minute DVD where Jean spoke how she committed or promised a creature that she would forgive. And of course, she made mention of Jesus forgiving people who were about to murder him on the cross. So one student asked whether Jean forgave because of her Christian belief, and whether only Christians are the ones with the capacity to forgive. And of course, it was a debate in the classroom, and one Muslim student said she was not a Christian, but she believed that forgiveness is absolutely necessary across religious divide. And she insisted that it comes from within. And we later learned that the teacher herself was an atheist who agreed with everyone that you don't have to be a believer to forgive. Even non-believers can forgive. So forgiveness is essentially a human quality.
That's fantastic. And I guess related to that, Letlapa, you've spoken about the need for more action, certainly in South Africa, on a governmental level to just erase any of the divisions that are keeping people from coming to an understanding of the importance of forgiveness and putting more political processes in place to help people come to this. Is that something that you see happening in the future, or do you see hope for that?
Surely, I'm hopeful for the future. I'm an optimist. And I still insist that if we are serious on the path of forgiveness, there has to be some interventions. South Africa is facing poverty, joblessness, and inequality. And these are not the circumstances that are conducive for peace and justice.
Excellent. And Jin, for you, what do you see as the next step in your work with the Lindy Fourie Foundation?
A major part of our work is seems to be international. There were people in the audience this morning, again, who asked if we would come to their country. And of course that means funding and the initiative. So far, initiatives of change have been the motivating factor. But I have a sense that there may be other groups who would like to assist in this respect. And even if we're unable to go personally, the documentary can be used and to good effect in terms of people going to that place of vulnerability and experiencing their own forgiveness. And I'm very impressed with the Pudu Foundation's work in this respect on the internet, and I honor and congratulate them.
And for people who are not taking part in the Forgiveness Challenge, what is the way that they can go about seeing your film, Beyond Forgiving, and getting involved in the Lindy Fourie Foundation?
We are only free to present our story on invitation. So we're not into pressuring anyone to see the story or collaborate. But we welcome anyone who is willing to do so to join us.
Fantastic. And are there any further events for our listeners in the UK while you're still on your tour there?
Yes, we're here until the 31st.
Yes, indeed. Every day is the action-packed day, but I think the highlight will be on the 27th at Royal Geographic Society, I think. That will be the highlight of our Beyond Forgiving UK tour. And of course, among other people, there will be Terry Way, the well-known priest or reverend who spent several years in captivity in Lebanon, and he will be the one who will be chairing the proceedings.
We're also invited to go to Belfast, Liverpool, Bradford. So it's going to be a really interesting journey.
And we'll make sure that we post details of any events that our participants in the UK can attend on our social media and our website as well. So,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. And I know that the participants of the Forgiveness Challenge are going to get a tremendous amount of inspiration out of viewing your film on the website. So thank you again for that.
A million thanks and more.
Thank you so much, Michael.
All right, good luck with everything, and we look forward to hearing future results of your amazing work together.
Thank you, and goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.